both. Thank you very much for joining me for this Ask Me Anything. I do have a lot of questions that have come in via Instagram and email, some really great questions, and I do want to try and move through them all. But I'm going to try and keep this session to 30 minutes, so I will try not to chat on too much about one particular topic. And then if there's anything that you would like me to go deeper on, I can do another video, or of course can do another live Q&A at any point. So we will go to a live question. So Lauren, you just mentioned about how to deal with the dynamics of sibling rivalry. So this is is this something in particular that you're seeing a lot of, or is one particular group or two particular siblings that you're focused on here?
I would say one particular group because typically I would have them sign up for the full term. So it's a recurring same group dynamic. Yeah.
Okay, great. So I think with siblings, I mean, many of us are siblings, so I think we can come from a place of compassion in that sense, that when siblings are coming into the class, they're coming in with all of this history and triggers and a deeper connection with each other than obviously they have with anyone else in the group. And when any kind of argument or disagreement starts between the siblings in the class, it's never just about what's happening in the class. There's all these different dynamics that we don't know about as the teacher that are coming from home, from shared history, from all sorts of dynamics that we just really don't know about. They have like a long story, and it's so much more than just he didn't give me this or she said that. And so firstly, bearing that in mind is really important, because it's not just about the disagreement that's in that moment. And firstly, just as you would with any group or any two children who are having a disagreement, definitely making sure that they both feel seen, like settling the situation first of all. And that might be inviting them to physically separate, like, you know, Jamie, would you like to go and sit over that side of the circle? And Emma, you come over to this side of the circle, just so we can settle, do some deep breaths, and definitely make sure that they both feel heard, but without escalating or continuing the disagreement. So again, just like you would with two other children, how you would de-escalate that situation, trying to make it a fair situation, but then also ensuring that we are educating them about the situation at hand. So as an example, if they're coming in and they're arguing, she said this, he said that, I don't like, this bickering, educating them on throughout the class, how we speak to each other, regardless of whether we are family or friends or strangers, and our own boundaries and what we can say to that person who is making us feel uncomfortable or upset, what our response is. So education, definitely. But in the moment, we really need to focus on settling the children. And because, as you mentioned, Lauren, that you've got a whole group there. It's not just two children in the class. So you need to make sure that the whole group is not being disrupted by this sibling disagreement. So it's not about brushing it under the carpet and being like, oh, it doesn't matter, because it does matter, but also we're not therapists. And, we are not the parent. We are delivering a class to a whole group. And sometimes it just takes one sentence for you to say, I understand this is very difficult for you now, and I see this is very frustrating for you. What would you like to do as a group? Shall we do some breathing? Shall we do some writing? Shall we do some drawing together, just so we can all calm down or feel a bit more settled? So maybe offering those regulation tools that we use in yoga. So breathing, maybe some drawing, some shaking it out, tapping, just to regulate them.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's just like not getting too involved in the actual
Mm,
argument. You know, you're not a referee as much as you're not a therapist. You're not trying to referee this like family argument that is so much more than just what he said, what she said, he's taken my thing, she's done this thing. It's just there's so much more to it. So it's almost like we can't possibly as kids yoga teachers come to a place where that argument is settled, because that disagreement is going to go home and it's going to be something that maybe they disagree about in one way or another for the next 40 years.
yeah.
So it's just about doing the best that you can to settle the situation. And I think if they're coming in and it is consistently the same thing, that's where you have to put your boundaries in for the entire class. And again, it's not like pinpointing or singling out those two siblings, but about for the, you know, for our whole class here, you know, how do we want to speak to each other? How do we want to be with each other? What can we do in a situation where someone, whether it's our friend, our brother or sister, is starting to feel annoying, or they're starting to upset us? What can we actually do? And, you know, giving those practical tools of sometimes you do just need to move across to the other side of the circle. Sometimes you do need to politely say to them, like, please, can you stop saying that?
Hmm.
And we also need to respect each other. And I think just consistently educating them, which, Lauren, I know that you definitely do this, but for other kids yoga teachers, just a reminder that we are educating the children on so much more than poses and regulation. However you're working with children, we're always educating them, their mindset and how they communicate, how they deal with situations. And so it's just constantly reinforcing like respect of yourself and others. And with that becomes boundaries and respecting other people's boundaries, speaking kindly to one another, use your breathing, move yourself away from the situation. Yes, I'm here to support you, but also you're not a therapist and you're not a referee.
Yeah.
So how do you feel about that, Lauren?
I feel a little bit more, um, yeah, shoulders are more relaxed. I think the part that I'm learning is also letting go of controlling too much of the situation. And I do appreciate I like that, um what you said about giving them the options for them to choose which tool they would like to use right now, whether it be drawing, breathing, or move like some sort of mindful movement instead of having to do a guessing game and then, yeah, enabling more of the disagreements that are happening.
Yeah, I think choice and just asking the children are two things that in any situation we can do. So whether the children are choosing not to participate, having an argument, looks like they're having a meltdown, whatever the situation is, just asking yourself, can I give them a choice here that's going to help them make a decision that's going to support them and their regulation? Or shall I just ask them, like, hey, what do you need from me right now? Because most of the time, they will have some sort of answer.
Yeah.
And then the third thing is also just looking at their behavior. What are they physically doing? And that will give you an indication on what they actually need.
Yeah.
You know, if you're talking in this situation with siblings, so if they're like actively trying to, you know, they're sat next to each other, they're like moving
Yeah.
away from each other, they want to be, they want to separate, but maybe they don't feel comfortable standing up and separating themselves
Hmm.
in the middle of your session.
Yeah.
Or, you know, maybe if they're sat next to each other and they're like, you know, poking each other, but they're actually practically inside each other, they
Yeah.
probably do want that close connection and it makes them feel comfortable, but they're not sure how to do that in the classroom
Mm,
dynamic.
yeah.
So yeah, a lot of the time the behavior, like what they're physically doing, is showing us what they actually need. And that is a little bit more nuance, you know, because you do have to be very observant and like quickly notice, okay, what's going on here? What do they probably need?
Yeah.
And that is a skill which I think many of us kids yoga teachers do actually have, But then if you're not sure, just ask them because they
Yeah.
often know what they need. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank
That
you,
is a great
Laura.
question. And I have to say, it's something that I've never really spoken about, even though obviously it comes up a lot if you're teaching family yoga or if you're, yeah, a lot of the time you do have siblings in the class together. And that is something that comes up a lot as a situation, but actually I've never been asked that. So it's such a good
Yeah.
question.
And I've also experienced the other end of the spectrum where there are some siblings that are completely glued to one another and dependent on each other for a sense of safety. And so that I've seen it manifest itself into one of the siblings always speaking for the other and always having to check on each other before saying
Mm.
something out loud. So that's also something that I've experienced where like, this is interesting to see.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
agree. I think that is also very common, especially for the first few sessions, because there is a sense of safety being with their sibling, even if outside of the class they're arguing and they don't really want to spend time together. Inside a class, when it's a new teacher, new environment, new children, there's a deep sense of safety. And for the first few sessions, that's what they need is to feel that connection, feel that safety so that they can feel settled. And then it's just gently encouraging them to work with a different partner or to work as the group or helping them both communicate, so it's not just the one child. Typically it's the older child that tends to speak for both of them. Or yeah, you ask a question and you see them look at each other, or they talk to each other before
Yeah, yeah,
it's like they make a group a joint decision
yeah,
before they decide, are we going to do this, how are we going to do it, what's our answer. And I
yeah,
think giving them the time and the space to be able to do that, but gently encouraging them and inviting them to spend more time in the group with the other children,
yeah,
and giving both of them the opportunity to communicate. And it doesn't have to be verbal, but like
yeah,
communicating through like drawing, choosing cards, so they're both
yeah,
actively participating. But
yeah.
yeah, I think it's a great question. I mean, we could definitely talk about this all day, but it's a good one to observe in your class.
Thanks, Laura.
Thank you. Okay, so I'm going to go to some questions that came in. So, how do you support children who are reluctant or refuse to take part in the class? Which I have spoken about before because I think this is also really common. So, again, it's that often they're coming in, they don't know you, they don't know the children, they don't know the environment, they don't know what yoga is. Like, if you put yourself in that child's position, that is a lot of unknowns for a very small child. And so often they need to just take time to sit apart from the group, like a little bit away from the group, where they can observe and they can see what is actually going on. What is this yoga thing? Like, what are the dynamics of the group? What is this teacher like? And then once they feel settled, then they will be more inclined to join the group. So it's completely normal, typical that you will get a child who does that. And it is really important that as a teacher, we make them feel welcomed, but we are not forcing them or even really overly encouraging them to participate. So they need to be able to see you. So if you're sat in a circle, which I always suggest with kids yoga classes, make sure that the child who is observing can see you, can see your face, your body language, and what you're doing. And so it feels like they're part of it. They are part of it. It's not just that they're feeling part of it, they are part of it. They are in the space. They're just choosing to watch and observe versus actively participating in the group activities. So making sure they know there is a space for them, there is a mat for them. When you're giving out resources, this is your scarf, this is your shaker, this is your pen and pencil, you're welcome to join in at any point. So just making sure they know they're part of the group, they're welcome to actively participate, this is your space, this is your physical space here. And that's really all you need to do. And once the child feels comfortable, and that might be after 20 minutes, or honestly, it might be after 3 sessions with you, then they will start to actively participate. And you'll be really surprised at how much they've learned and how much they start to really communicate. So they go from being quiet, observed on the like physically on the outskirts of the group, and then they move into, now they're talking, they know all the songs, they know all the poses, the games, they know the routine, and they're doing this at home. So it is part of their learning process, and it's part of their regulation process, and it's just important that we respect that. We don't try to force anything, we don't overly encourage it, we don't make a big deal about it when they do join the circle. It's like, oh, you've joined the circle. Wonderful. Like, you don't need to be doing like, yay, oh my gosh, that's so good, everybody, isn't it great, Emma joined the circle, because that can send them back into this place of feeling insecure and safe. All the attention is on them. So it's just, here's your space. When you're ready, welcome to join the group. And then when they do, then just give them a smile, some eye contact, a little rub on the back, but not making a big deal about it. Okay, next question. How do you manage different energy in the room? For example, when 1 or 2 very unfocused children in an otherwise calm group. So I think if we're talking about a calm group, this would typically be during relaxation, maybe Shavasana, or maybe at the beginning of the class when everybody's a bit quiet and they're just settling in. And you have 1 or 2 children who are maybe overexcited, want to talk a lot, maybe they need a lot of movement. So we're not trying to bring all of the other children out of their calm, regulated state to meet these other children. We're trying to bring the overexcited, perhaps dysregulated children into a place where they can feel settled and really be a part of the group which feels more calm, which in yoga, typically we're trying to get them regulated, calm, relaxed, even if we're doing movement. So choosing some activities that are specifically for regulation, for calming and grounding, but in a way that is accessible to the, let's call them overexcited or overstimulated children. So that could be things like tapping on their body, or like on the whole body, so using fists, gorilla breath, shaking it out, body percussion where we're singing or chanting whilst clapping our hands and our thighs, or even tapping shoulders. So something that is going to involve movement, and I would say sensory input with their own body. So it's very grounding. And even if the children are calm, and you have to remember that quiet doesn't mean calm. Like, quiet does not mean regulated. Sometimes and very often, children are dysregulated, but they are so fearful, or perhaps they're shy or anxious, and so they're actually very, very quiet, but internally they are dysregulated. So quiet does not always mean calm. So it's just about getting all of the children to a place where they are settled and regulated. And sometimes that does come, well, it does often come through movement. So yeah, there's kind of shaking, breathing with arm movements, body percussion, and some sort of sensory input. So that way, the calm, or let's say the quiet children, are also regulating and settling. The overstimulated, excited children are starting to slow things down, but in a way that's accessible. It's all about making it accessible to the entire group. And usually if you're doing some sort of movement or sensory input or breathing that's a bit more, like it's a calming breath, but it's a bit more dynamic and engaging, that makes it accessible to the entire group. How do you set expectations with parents? Also, this is from Celine. This is a really good question because we have to we have to communicate with parents. Right? If you're working with children, parents are a big part of your job. Okay, so it's really important that we communicate effectively with the parents. And when we're talking about expectations, so setting the expectations of the parents, we need to do that way before the children are even signed up and registered for your class. So all parents have different expectations, honestly. So some examples of questions that I've been asked are, what are the objectives of the class? Physically, what will they be doing? So, more like physical milestones that the children will get. What are the aims and outcomes of the class? Will they be calm? Will they be quiet? My child doesn't know how to meditate. I don't think he can do an hour being calm and quiet. So these are things that parents are thinking about when they're considering signing up to a children's yoga class. Some of it is like, what are they going to get from it? So maybe they don't know the benefits. Some of it is my child actually going to be able to do this because he is not calm or quiet? So it is educating parents through your promotion and any interactions you have with the parents before they sign up for the class. So that is, if you're promoting, obviously somehow, whether it's through Instagram or Facebook groups, however you're promoting your classes, you're saying exactly what it is. Are you doing art and music? Are you doing dance? Is it more of a mindfulness-based class? Are they doing moving meditations? Are you doing mandala? So what are you actually incorporating? Because a lot of parents will think, okay, yoga, so they're going to spend 60 minutes doing yoga poses. Well, maybe there isn't a lot of yoga poses in your yoga classes. Maybe your yoga class is more about relaxation, regulation tools, breathing, dancing, some mindful art. So just saying in your promotional materials or any interactions with the parents, this is exactly the kind of thing we do. So it's not like, here's my class plan, but these are the kind of activities that we typically do. It's play-based, or it's holistic, or it's story-based. We do story, I bring in books and we do movement through books. So really letting them know what it is. You can definitely let them know what the expectations of the children are, or are not. This is, they are 5 years old, so we're doing yoga through movement, dance, music, and play. We are working on regulation skills with the children so that they feel more settled. It's about nervous system health. It's about relaxation. The children are certainly not expected to be calm and quiet because they're 5 years old, and that is actually not typical or normal, and we are not trying to force that. So however you're running your classes, whatever it includes, whatever the benefits are, you need to communicate that before the parents register. Now, some parents might decide, I think this one's not for me. I don't really want my child going to a yoga class that's more about relaxation and art and mindfulness like they do with that at school. I want something that's more going to help them with their coordination and the balance. And that's totally fine. Maybe that's not your class. I mean, I would argue that kids yoga is really, really relevant for anything that you're trying to teach children. But let's say the parents decide, this is not my class. I think I need something that's more like martial arts or gymnastics. And that's totally fine. I always say, you can't be the teacher for everybody, so don't even try. Parents are going to be looking for different things for their children. And yes, all children will benefit from yoga, but it is much better for the parent to decide that, I think this is not for me, and opt out of it, versus they come to the kids yoga class, they pay, sign up for 6 weeks, and then they decide after the first class, this is not what I expected at all. Then you have an unhappy parent, you have to deal with refunds, it's just an uncomfortable situation and potentially not a great review. So I always think that it's better to be upfront right from the start. Oh my gosh, that is 30 minutes already. Okay. I need to do fire round. Okay, How do you keep a group safe and regulated without singling a child out? This one is easy. I just say we all of the time. We are doing this, or we are not doing that. We as a community, we as a group. Would everybody like to do this? Shall we all relax on the ground? Is everybody ready to do Shavasana? So making it a group thing versus constantly saying, Jane, can you sit down? Jane, are you ready to do this? Jane, are you listening? Jane, are you ready for Shavasana? That does really single the children out. So I use the children's names throughout the class as a way to, of course, grab their attention. Oh, Jane, thank you so much for helping me with that. Emma, would you like to sit on your mat, or do you want to sit over here on the mat next to me? So obviously using the children's names, but in general, I use a lot of we are doing this, we are not doing that, and everybody is doing this. And that way you get the whole group. You're talking about us as a community, which yoga is. And it just means that children are not feeling like they're constantly being disciplined or singled out. How do you navigate a class with an autistic child who has outbursts? Okay, so if you're working with children, regardless of what type of learner they are, whether they are neurodivergent or not, you might have children who have, for sure, you're working with children, you're going to have meltdowns, tantrums, anxiety, outbursts, and those outbursts might be of tears, or it might be of anger or frustration. And firstly, always coming from a place of compassion where you can, and also coming from a place of regulation. Okay, regulate yourself. Take a few deep breaths before you handle the situation. Go into it from a place where you're settled and that you can really think clearly and that you can support the child. So if you have a neurodivergent child and they have outbursts, let's say of any emotion at all, then firstly you can ask the child, what is it that they need support with? What can you help them with? What do they need right now? Because maybe they need time away from the group, maybe they need movement, maybe they need to just draw, and you got everybody pens and paper. Let's have 2 minutes where we all settle ourselves by doing some drawing of whatever you like. Drawing is my go-to for just regulating and settling the nervous system and emotions. If it's something that is consistent every class, so it's the same, let's say the same behavior, and it's either disruptive for the class or it's really upsetting or frustrating for that one child, certainly speaking to the parents to get information from the parents. So not saying, hey, this is a problem, but you're saying, I would really like to support your child as best as I can in my kids yoga class. What do you do at home, or what kind of behaviors, is this something that you see at home? What works at home that I can do in my class? So definitely, again, coming back to parent communication is really important. And then just seeing what might trigger that kind of outburst. So something is happening before the tears or before the frustration. So just noticing what is it? So speaking to the child, speaking to the parents, observing and noticing, and as I say, always coming from a place of compassion and regulation of yourself so that you can think clearly and handle the situation with a clear mind and from an emotionally regulated state. But yeah, we're working with children, emotions and dysregulation, especially with children 10 years and under, and also teenagers. It's part of the job. It's part of the job, and it's what makes it fun and interesting. Every child is very different. All right, I'm gonna do one more.
I do have something to add, Laura, if you don't
Oh,
mind,
please, yes.
because I do work with a lot of neurodiverse teens and children, and something that has worked for me is before during the registration process, there'll be a form with questions that would also ask if they have specific needs, the level of support needs, if they've also got an official diagnosis that they can share with us. And that would serve me as the teacher to understand how to better support them in the group dynamic and for the child themselves. And if this child has higher support needs or is non-speaking, I would also typically take an extra step and actually call the parent before the class begins or the term begins. So I think that in the parent actually appreciates that because you're willing to get to learn more about their child and their needs and not reject them again because most of the teens or kids I work with them they're frustrated because a lot of the group classes they've signed up for their child they end up being either kicked out or it's just not inclusive for them. Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I think if you're working directly with the parents, so let's say you're not in a school environment, for example, or often like if you're the one that's organizing the class, so
Mm,
you're typically the one that has the parent communication. I think asking them at the start definitely questions like, as you say, does your child have any specific needs or anything I can support them with? Do they have a diagnosis? Um, Even just like, are there any interests so that you can best,
yes.
plan that class to make that all of the children as comfortable as possible right from the start. If you're working with a school, you can always ask the teacher, like, is there any children that need additional support or anything that I need to know about the children? And the teachers will always give you
Yes.
some great tips on what they're doing in the class, right? What they're doing in the classroom. So even if children don't have a diagnosis per se, they might say, this child needs extra support with blah, 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 and this is
Yep.
what we do in the class. And then that is so valuable for you as a teacher to plan a class or even just on the spot know like, okay, this child's going to
Yep.
need extra support with that. Yeah, so I think where you can, definitely getting as much valuable information from parents and teachers or outside professionals because it does make your job easier because you know exactly what you're stepping into as a teacher. And of
Yep.
course, it makes the child and the whole group feel more at ease and more, you're just creating a deeper sense of connection from the start because you're already there prepared for like, okay, I know what you need support with. I know how I can
Yep.
best support you. And then, yeah, I think asking the children, especially if you're working with teens, you can really ask them, how can I best support you, or what kind of help would you like from me? And again, a lot of the time they might know, or they might not say it in so many words, but you can figure out from
Yep.
what they're saying. But yeah, that is a really great tip. Thank you, Lauren. Um, okay, I'll go to one more question actually that came in not that long ago, about where is it? It was about sustainable teaching. Basically, here we go, from Susanna. Something I'm struggling with at the moment is my own body. How do you teach children's yoga in a way that's physically sustainable so you can keep doing this work long term? Actually, I think she used the word retirement, which I was like, yes, I love that. I love that you're
Mm.
planning to do this until retirement. But yeah, I think it is so important. And I do speak a lot about teacher well-being and making kids yoga sustainable in so many ways. So you really have to, firstly, you have to regulate yourself. Like, I know I've said the word regulate a million times in this last 30 minutes, but it's just so important. If you are teaching children from a dysregulated state, so by that I mean you're kind of not even in your own body. You're in this hyper stimulated, really overly aware state where you're teaching and you're giving a lot, you're projecting your voice, you're giving a lot of energy, lots of dynamic movement, and you're kind of running off this really it's like the sympathetic state. So you're running in this state of like go 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 go. Your heart rate's increased, your eyes are like really wide, like yeah, let's do this. And it's just not settled at all. It's like you're almost not even in your body. So before the class starts, you have to take time to breathe. You have to take time to ground yourself. So this will bring in more energy, a clear mind, and you will be regulated so that when the children actually come in, you're in a calm, settled state, which then sets up the tone for the entire class, for the group, and for the time that you're together. If the children come in and you're this little whirlwind of like, oh my gosh, it's so nice, everybody's here, like, and you can be excited, but so overstimulated, the children see that and they respond to that. So you can also be excited to see them, but be grounded and calm and have a slow heart rate and a slow breathing rate, and that just sets the tone. So I highly recommend. I always used to do this right from honestly, since I've been teaching kids yoga. So for 12 years, it was always something that I did before the children come in. I just sit down, just 5 breaths. If I was feeling really tired, I would do 3 wood chopper breaths. It would get me energized. Otherwise, just do a few calming breaths, sit down, and just be there ready for them. It makes a huge difference. The other thing is that you don't have to be doing all the things all the time. So set yourself up where you can demonstrate things and you can, you can instruct things, you can hold space, you can guide them completely, whether you're talking about teens or 3-year-olds. But you don't have to be doing everything all the time. So if you're playing a game with young children, then of course you introduce the game, you might do a demonstration, you say this is how it's going to go, you do the first round with them, and then after that you're simply holding space. You're instructing them, you're guiding them, but you're not doing all the poses. If you're doing dance freeze, for example, they're moving around like little butterflies and you are there observing them, holding the space, encouraging them. And then when they get into their pose, again, you're reminding them, this is the pose that we're doing. Very nice, everybody. You're holding the space from a regulated state. You're not doing everything. If you're physically doing everything and you're doing back-to-back classes, you are going to be physically exhausted for sure. So remember you're there to hold the space, to guide them, you're not having to do everything. Regulate yourself before and also during. When the kids are doing breathing techniques, you do it with them. When the children are relaxing, you're holding space, you're guiding them from a relaxed state. Because if you are overstimulated, overexcited, coming from a place where you're exhausted and dysregulated, it is almost impossible for the children to settle and be in a regulated state. So that is how I would say to make it sustainable with your energy levels in the class. And then also be really aware of, outside of your teaching time, how much time are you spending planning? You should not be spending 2 hours to plan and prepare a 45-minute class. Like, make your life easier. Get one lesson plan template and just change the themes, change the poses. Just trying to make your teaching life, the planning and the preparation, as easy as possible. You don't need lots of resources. You don't need to be hand making, all these beautiful resources. Like, that's nice, yes, but you know what is nice? A really present, regulated, energized teacher. That's so much nicer than like laminated bits and pieces for the classes, which you're only going to use, for 5 minutes of a class. So notice how much time you're actually spending planning and preparing for each class, and then set it up so that, if you're working with a school, try and do your classes, to maybe, it's very dependent on each person. So I personally prefer to spend a whole morning in a school and do like 4 classes back to back. Whereas some people might like to do 2 hours on a Tuesday morning and then go back to the same school for 1 hour on a Thursday. So you've got to set your schedule up to fit into your energy levels. So this is a lot about self-awareness, what fits in with your life, you know, how much time it takes you to get to the place that you're going to be teaching. And then mentally, how much time are you actually thinking about it? I know when I first started teaching yoga, I would spend so much time going over the sequences in my head, and that was exhausting. That was like almost as exhausting as physically doing it. So just being really aware of like, how much time are you stressing or worrying about, is this going to be a perfect class? And just remember that actually the perfect class when it comes to children and teenagers is you being there, making it just as a positive experience for the children. And they just want to be seen, they want to be heard, they want to be part of this group. They don't care what kind of games or poses you're teaching them. Like, honestly, they just want to be with you, part of the community, like having a positive experience. So just being really self-aware of that. And everybody is really different, and we all have different schedules and different lifestyles. So it's important that you take notice of that. And it is important that we make this sustainable because children really need this. They need it more and more. I see it more and more every year that children definitely need these life skills that we're teaching. And so we have to be able to take care of ourselves so that we can teach from a place of, you know, calm and regulation, and be able to teach or at least reach more children, you know, and be aware of how much you're taking on. If you're teaching like 15 classes a week, that's really intense for almost any any teacher. So maybe you need to adjust your schedule a little bit. So I don't know how many questions that was, but it certainly was not the 16 that were on my list. But I will do some shorter videos, and I'm happy to do Q&As again. So thank you very much, Lauren. Thank you for your lovely questions and input. It was really nice. And, you know, we should do let me get rid of that. We should do a joint live, Lauren, because you have so much experience and you're so
Let's
active.
do that.
That would
Yes.
be cool, right?
It would. It would. I would really love that.
Yeah, okay. Seriously, we'll organize it. Yay.
Okay. Yay.
All
Thank
right.
you, Lauren.
Well, thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate it. And yeah, for anybody watching the recording, if you have any more questions, or maybe you want to go deeper on a particular topic that we spoke about today, then do send me a DM or comment so that I know exactly what you're interested in learning.